In the early 1950s, hundreds of families lived peacefully in a small rural town called Ashley in Kansas, USA. One quiet summer night, a strange call came into the town's administration. The caller, who sounded terrified, reported a horrifying sight in the sky unlike anything he had ever seen. Just a few minutes later, the administration was stunned to receive dozens of calls from other residents, all describing the same bizarre phenomenon. Since Ashley was a small town with limited resources, the report was escalated to a neighboring city called Hays. Immediately, a police patrol was dispatched to investigate, but what they discovered was far stranger than all the reports they had received. The town of Ashley, with all its inhabitants, had completely vanished from the face of the earth. Our story begins in early August 1952, with a simple American citizen named Gabriel Jonathan. He worked as a farmer and shepherd in the rural town of Ashley, Kansas. Gabriel told some acquaintances that he had been hearing strange noises coming from an unknown source near the village limits. When he started talking to people, he discovered he wasn't the only one hearing these sounds. Others had also been seeing strange lights suddenly appearing in the middle of the night and then vanishing. One day, specifically Friday, August 8th, Gabriel called the town administration at 7:13 p.m. to report something strange that appeared before him in the sky. A bizarre, pitch-black, terrifying opening in the heart of the sky above the town. Nothing was coming out of it, and nothing was entering it, as if it were a rift in the sky itself, unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. But due to the strangeness of the report, the administrative employee didn't believe a word Gabriel said. He thought the caller was drunk or joking. Dozens of catastrophic calls. Only a few minutes passed before dozens of calls began pouring in to the administrative employee from other residents of Ashley. All of them were reporting the same strange phenomenon that Gabriel had described. That large, dark, terrifying black opening in the town's sky. As the reports multiplied, the employee began to realize that Gabriel's call wasn't from a drunk person. It became clear that a disaster was unfolding, but he didn't know how to respond or how to help them. When the news spread among the office staff, they went out themselves to verify the matter. Indeed, when they went outside, they saw the strange opening in the sky with their own eyes and confirmed that the problem was far beyond their capabilities. After all, they were just a small administrative office in a small town, whose population was said to be around 700. At this point, they decided to escalate the matter to the neighboring town of Hays. Hays was a larger town than Ashley and had its own security forces. They began calling them, describing the reports they had received and how they had personally verified them, confirming that the strange sight was indeed in the sky. However, the problem was that Hays's town administration and its police force were not convinced by what they were being told. The distance between Ashley and Hays wasn't very great, and when they looked at the sky from their location, they didn't see anything above Ashley. As the reports continued, and Ashley's administration insisted on their story, the Hays police began to take the matter seriously. They decided to send out one of their scout officers to see what this strange talk was all about. That officer was Patrol Officer Alan Masani. The very next morning directly, at precisely 7:54 a.m., Alan left the Hays police station and drove towards the only road connecting Ashley to the neighboring towns. It was a well-known road to everyone living in Hays, and they had driven on it many times before. But what happened that day in particular was extremely strange. Alan drove a long distance and began to feel that the journey was taking much longer than it should have. Every time he looked around to see if he had arrived, he found himself still on the highway, until suddenly he found himself back in Hays again. How did that happen? He didn't know. The road from Hays to Ashley was a straight road with no side roads, curves, or secondary paths. It was completely illogical for anyone to get lost on such a road, even if they didn't know it by heart. But with that, Alan blamed himself for not paying attention, got back on the road, and started the journey again. But time passed, and he ended up back in Hayes for a third time. At that point, Alan was convinced that something was wrong. Alan returned to the police station and immediately reported what had happened to him. Based on his strange report, a convoy of 7 police cars departed at 9:15 a.m., heading from Hayes to Ashley. But after they got on the road, what happened to the 7 cars was the same as what happened to Alan when he was alone. All 7 cars found themselves in Hayes once again. While this was happening, the calls from the distressed town didn't stop. In fact, they grew stranger with each caller. All the calls were reporting that the strange black opening in the sky was growing much larger and much darker than before. But since the police were unable to reach the town in any way, there was nothing they could do but advise people to stay in their homes and not go outside until the police could figure out how to deal with this disaster. Of course, they didn't tell the residents that they couldn't even reach the town so as not to increase their fear. The police officers gathered and studied the maps to see if there was any other road leading to Ashley they could take. But unfortunately, there was only this one road. In other words, the only road leading to Ashley was no longer leading there. Later that same day, at 8:17 p.m., Hayes police received a call from a woman living in Ashley named Eileen Cantor. She reported that her neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Milton, and their children Jeffrey and Brooke, were missing and could not be found anywhere in the entire town. The Milton family, according to Eileen, had been very scared by what they saw in the sky and tried to escape the town completely in their car. But after they left their house and started on their way, no one saw their car again, nor did anyone see them leaving the town limits. Hayes police then tried to confirm if anyone had actually come from Ashley. But when they monitored the roads and asked all the residents of their own town, it became clear that not a single resident of Hayes had seen a car matching the description of the Milton family's car, or even similar to it. The night passed, and August 10th dawned. At 7:30 a.m., calls once again rained down on Hayes police. But this time, people were complaining that Ashley was plunged into complete darkness, engulfing the entire town. When the police replied, "Folks, it's 7:30 a.m., which means it should be daylight," the caller's response was that the sun hadn't risen since it set the previous night. At that point, the police officers decided they absolutely had to reach these people by any means necessary. They requested a helicopter, which departed towards Ashley, hoping that visibility would be better from the air. Indeed, the helicopter moved towards Ashley, but unfortunately, it couldn't reach it. Or rather, it reached the location where the town was supposed to be, but they saw nothing from the air. All they found at the town site was an empty field. This situation continued until noon on August 11th. And then something happened that made the whole situation take an even stranger turn. An Ashley resident named Phoebe Danielle Visky called Hayes police and reported that her daughter, Erica, was talking to her father from behind their locked apartment door. Her father, who was standing outside in the pitch-black darkness that had enveloped the town for nearly 2 days. When the police asked her what was so strange about that, and why her father had even left the house under these circumstances, when they had warned everyone not to leave, Phoebe's response was that her husband had died 3 years prior in a car accident with a drunk driver. She said with a trembling voice full of dread that her daughter Erica was insisting on going out into the utter darkness to be with them. From that terrifying call from Phoebe, calls began pouring into Hayes police, 329 calls, all of them reporting similar incidents with their young children, people either dead for years or strange people they didn't know. They came out of the fire. Despite the strangeness of this overwhelming number of reports, the real catastrophe occurred the next day, August 12th. More than 400 calls from Ashley residents reported that over 200 children from the town had all disappeared during the night, and no one knew where they were. What was even stranger was that they disappeared from inside homes that their owners had locked themselves and were certain of the locks. Everyone confirmed that there was no trace of anyone entering, nor were there any strange sounds during the night. A very difficult day passed for the residents of Ashley. Then came August 13th. At 5:19 p.m., Hayes police received a call from an elderly citizen named Scott Lands, reporting that he saw a large fire coming from the south through his window. According to him, the fire was so massive that it illuminated the town, which had been plunged into darkness for days. Minutes passed, and calls began to increase from people also reporting the same fire. Some even described it as fire descending from the sky itself, from the black opening they had reported on the first day. But strangely, no one living near Ashley reported seeing anything like what they were witnessing. A few hours passed, and at 12:00 a.m., a call came in from a man named Benjamin Andico, saying that the fire he had reported had increased greatly and reached a point where the entire town was illuminated as if it were daylight. Suddenly, the line cut off after Benjamin's last words. He saw something coming from the south, but unfortunately, he didn't have time to describe to the police what that thing was. The state of horror and tension continued until the last call came in at 9:47 p.m. It was a terrifying call by all measures. Officer Peter Welch from Hayes Police answered the call this time. As soon as he picked up the receiver, he heard a muffled, unclear voice. He began to introduce himself, stating he was from the Hayes Police Department, and his name was Peter Welch, but no one responded. When he repeated again and asked, "Is anyone there?" he heard a woman's voice say, "Yes, yes, Welch." Peter immediately replied, "Who is this? Please identify yourself." She responded, "My name is April Foster." At that point, Peter deduced that her son had died in the fire that people were reporting. While he was trying to calm her, she interrupted him and said, "My son died last year. I saw him yesterday. I warned him and told him to be careful of cars when he was riding his bike, but he wouldn't listen." Peter couldn't comprehend anything being said. He told her, "I need you to calm down and explain exactly what's happening with you." She responded hysterically, "Don't you hear what I'm telling you? I'm telling you they came back. They all came back. All those who died and disappeared came back yesterday, and they're looking for us. My son spoke to me and whined at me, saying, 'Mommy, I'm fine, where are you? I want to see you.'" Suddenly she went silent and didn't continue speaking. Peter, in complete shock, asked her, "Are you in a safe place?" She told him, "I'm hiding like everyone else. We're all hiding. We all saw them coming from the fields. But some people opened their doors for them. They opened them after seeing their missing loved ones." And Peter began to hear screams coming from a distance. April's voice cut through, saying, "I don't know exactly what happened to them, but I got scared and locked myself in tighter. And when I looked out the window, I saw their houses burning with them trapped inside. I'm hiding in a closet on the ground floor now." Suddenly, April went silent, and Peter began to call out to her, asking, "Are you safe? Are you okay? If you can hear me, give me any sign." But unfortunately, April didn't respond. Suddenly, he heard the sound of glass breaking, and April's voice crying out, "Help me! Something entered the house." Peter told her, "Stay silent as much as you can. Don't make any sound." Suddenly, he heard the voice of a child coming from a distance saying, "Mommy, I'm here." And after seconds, he heard footsteps coming from a distance and a child calling, "Mommy, are you hiding from me? Where are you?" And April's breathing grew louder from fear. Peter tried to reassure her, saying, "Don't worry, he'll leave." But the sound of footsteps kept getting clearer and closer to the receiver. Suddenly, laughter and a child saying, "Got you, Mommy." April began to scream, and there was loud commotion on the phone line. Then the call disconnected. The last earthquake and complete disappearance. This terrifying call was the last one received from Ashley by Hayes Police. After that, the police continued to try to reach anyone there. But in the early morning of August 17th, the state of Kansas detected a violent earthquake measuring 7.9 on the Richter scale that struck the area where the town was located. The U.S. Geological Survey stated that the earthquake's epicenter was directly beneath Ashley. Of course, an earthquake of this magnitude didn't just affect Ashley, but all the neighboring towns, including Hayes. Consequently, security forces from Hayes went out for the second time towards Ashley. But this time, it wasn't like every other time. The road didn't end with them back in Hayes as it had before. This time, they actually reached Ashley, or the site of Ashley. And what they found there was a surprise by all measures. After Hayes police reached the site of Ashley, they discovered that the entire town had vanished. By vanished here, it's not meant that its residents died, but rather the city itself disappeared. Its houses, its residents, its vegetation, its characteristics, everything in it, literally. It was as if this place had never been a town before. What's stranger is that while they were searching for any remnants of the city, they found nothing but a large rift in the ground resembling a canyon, about 900 meters long and 450 meters wide. Even more bizarre, the rift was glowing, and around it there was no sign indicating that there had been life here before. After this strange discovery, search efforts continued in hopes of finding any residents for 12 days, but unfortunately, to no avail. There was nothing to indicate that people had ever been there. The unanswered mystery, fact or fiction. On August 29th, the police announced their failure to find any survivors and ceased the search. After the despair that gripped the Hayes police forces, they returned to their town, and everyone went home. Around 2:30 a.m. on August 30th, a second earthquake, similar to the first, struck the area with a magnitude of 7.5 on the Richter scale. And again, the U.S. Geological Survey identified its epicenter, and it was also found to be coming from beneath Ashley, specifically at the rift that was supposed to have swallowed the residents. Like the previous time, Hayes police went out to investigate. At 5:30 a.m., they reached the location, but this time they found that the glowing rift in the ground had also disappeared. Amidst confusion, astonishment, and horror, the police forces returned to Hayes again and agreed that no one would ever speak again about what happened to the cursed town of Ashley. Although the story we've told is strange, mysterious, and terrifying, there is no evidence to confirm what happened in it, especially since the first time this story appeared online was on April 7, 2012, on a famous website called Creepypasta, which specializes in such tales. From there it spread to the popular Reddit site and then to many other sites. But are there any proofs, documents, or police reports that tell about what happened? There is nothing. And when we traced the events in this story ourselves, we found that the only earthquake that occurred near Kansas in 1952 was on April 9th, not in August at all. And the earthquake's epicenter, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, was near El Reno in Oklahoma. Furthermore, logic dictates that if two earthquakes of such magnitude struck the same location with a very slight time difference, as happened, it would surely have been an unforgettable event and would have been recorded in history until today. Yet records mention nothing of the sort. Moreover, the U.S. map does not even contain a town named Ashley in Kansas. Add to that, one of the residents of Hayes, where most of the story's events take place or nearby, commented on this story, saying he had personally reviewed the transportation and road maps in his town dating back to 1951 and found no mention of a nearby town named Ashley. However, what makes us slightly suspicious about the matter is that some sources mentioned that a collector of antiques and old manuscripts claimed that among his possessions was a birth certificate for a child dating back to 1934, stating that the child's mother was born in a town in Kansas named Ashley. So, was there actually a town named Ashley at one point, and it was absorbed into a larger city, as happens all the time? Or is the name Ashley an abbreviation or a corrupted name for another city? Especially since Kansas has towns called Ashland and Ash Valley. And the most important question, is the whole story fabricated, or did it actually happen in a certain year? And as is typical for the U.S. government, they erased all traces of it. This is the question for which we have no answer.